So, you're looking for a cheap smartphone that's actually decent, because top of the line models can cost you over £1,000, which is quite frankly ridiculous. There's plenty of games and Snyder's pretzel pieces to buy with that money. But when it comes to budget blowers, the options are pretty limited. They say they're good and the spec sheet looks pretty impressive, but then when you finally get your hands on it, it turns into a slow, clunky piece of shit faster than you can say Alcatel. But Realme has been challenging those expectations with some pretty decent phones over the past few years, packing some pro specs at low prices. Does the Realme 8 Pro dare to leap further? That's a pun that'll make more sense as we get into this video. So let's get into it. Hey up and welcome to New Rising Media, your home of hands-on reviews and gloves-off opinions about tech and gaming. I'm Jason England, all-round nerd journalist, and I thank you, right there, for taking the time out of your busy day to check out this video. Cheers! And as always, before I kick off a review, the quick disclaimer so you know exactly where I'm coming from with this. The 8 Pro was provided to me by Realme, and it's been my daily driver for the better part of a couple of weeks now. I've been putting it through my normal real world testing. I've done some benchmarks, but if you've been around, you know that that's not what we do here. We talk about how this is to use in real life, not just for performance stats. Now, I saw a lot of comments on my previous video because I couldn't tell you as much as I really wanted to say because of embargoes. I was gutted, the words were right there on the tip of my tongue. In fact, I actually nearly posted a video that showed the side of the box that had all of the specs on it, but I couldn't in good conscience sneak them in there. So for you lovely bunch of people who had lots of questions about this phone, and even though a few YouTubers broke the embargo guidelines and dropped some of these specs early, I'm going to go ahead and start from the top with a quick fire round answering some of the questions that you guys had. Obviously there's some bigger questions that I will go into more detail on as we go into the review, but for the benefit of the people who just want a quick answer, let's get going. No, the version I'm testing is just 4G. No, the screen is not 120Hz, it's 60Hz refresh rate. Yes, the display is AMOLED. Yes, it has a fingerprint reader under the screen. There is blue light reducing technology built into the OS itself. Yes, there technically is external mic support for the camera, but not on the app itself. So install another app like Filmic Pro and jobs are good. The aperture on the main camera is f1.88. The chipset inside is Snapdragon 720G. And hello to you and everyone else in the comments from India. It's lovely to see you all here. Now, the Realme 8 Pro comes in at under £300. I've asked Realme to give me a specific price before they go ahead and announce it at the main event, which is happening as of this video going out. But at the time of me filming this, they haven't got back to me. But if they did between then and now, I will cut now to a clip from a random location where I tell you what the prices are. So I can confirm that yes, they did get back to me with price information. The Realme 8 Pro in the UK comes in one configuration, which is with 8GB of RAM and 128GB of onboard storage. And the price is £279, and it will be launched on the 31st of March. Available in the Infinite Blue, which is the one that I was reviewing, an Infinite Black, and a Punk Black, which I assume is just an all matte black, but you'll probably see on the actual event. Anyway, back to the review. And we're going to move swiftly along to talking about the hardware. Does it look any good? Well, it's certainly divisive. It's a standard slab, nothing's really changed there. The phone is quite lightweight because of the plastic back, which is good for the hand feel. Hand feel is one of those really weird terms, but I digress. It does make it feel cheap, but on the flip side, it's good to have a phone where I don't immediately feel the need to put a case on the back of it. But visually, you may want to cover it up, because what is this? Seriously. Don't get me wrong, the two-tone blue is really nice, and I like that smartphone companies are doing some really nice things with my favorite color. But this is a big problem. It's a smartphone design equivalent of your auntie having live, laugh, love on their living room wall. But beyond the cringe factor, this is a nicely put together piece of kit. There's no creaks. It doesn't bend if you put any pressure on it, and it's a flat display. It's not curved on the sides, which is great. To end this on the positive though, Realme have continued their support for a 3.5mm headphone jack, which for me and my 8-year-old Sennheiser headphones is good news. Anyway, let's move on to performance and usability. The Realme 8 Pro packs a 2.3 GHz Snapdragon 720G processor, running alongside an Adreno 618 GPU, just one less than 619, and a 5th generation Qualcomm AI engine. For multitasking, you get 8GB of RAM and you get 128GB of onboard storage, expandable with a micro SD card slot on the side. Alongside this, you get dual SIM support, which is nice for international travelers out there. Up top, you have a 6.4-inch FHD Plus AMOLED display with up to 1000 nits of peak brightness, a 90.8% screen to body ratio with a bit of a chin on the bottom, a fingerprint sensor underneath the screen, a 180Hz touch sampling rate, and unfortunately a 60Hz screen refresh rate. From a performance standpoint, it obviously doesn't stand up to the bigger, more expensive options out there. And the one I'm testing in particular doesn't have 5G networking. In fact, if you're thinking, wait, those specs sound kind of familiar, that's because they are. Minus the camera system, which we'll get into later on in this video, this shares an identical spec sheet to the Realme 7 Pro. I personally would have liked to have seen more, but for those who aren't necessarily spec chasers, it's fine. It's decent for a budget phone, and in a market where many manufacturers are adding screens with much more buttery smooth refresh rates than this, at a similar if not identical price point, the omission here becomes a little bit more glaring and a little bit more disappointing. I get that there are far more deal-breaking compromises that Realme could have made here. And to be fair, let's invert what I said there and compare it to the rest of the market. Most people are using an iPhone that has an unforgivable 60Hz refresh rate, given how expensive it is. But it's something to note. It's bright and vivid, but it's not as smooth as I would have wanted it to be. As for the user experience this kind of restrained power gives you, it's fine. Expect this to slow down a little bit when multitasking or doing anything particularly processor intensive, but there's a gaming mode built in that turbo boosts everything just a little bit, so games like Call of Duty Mobile run pretty well on this. And outside of that, for casual everyday use, this will do you just fine. On the software side of things, does the Realme 8 Pro hold up? Yes and no. Let me explain. You've got Realme UI 2.0 running on top of Android 11 here. And out of all of the custom skins that I've used, this is the one that I've probably felt the most conflicted about, because it brings some really good quality of life features, but then also really annoys me. As I mentioned in my first hands-on impressions, the optimizations here make for a really fast, fluid experience that you will have no trouble just zipping around in and jumping into different apps. Alongside that, the deep level of customization here is warmly welcome, giving you over 100 different options to change the color of it, change the theming of it, change the app icons, and even change the app icon density, so you could have something that's more resemblant of an iPhone with a much more app-dense screen, or you could have something much more refined. The main problem here, however, as it is with most budget phones, is bloatware. You can get rid of some of them, but others are uninstallable, and that is really frustrating. And the notifications for these apps that they sneak into your app tray are garish to say the least. Overall, if you can ignore this big blemish, then the experience is fine. You get all of the security and quality of life features of Android 11, and Realme have added in some extra security features too, which are nice to have. And now, for what is the make or break category of this phone review, and that's this thing. Is the camera any good? Now, you have your 108 megapixel main shooter here. You've got an 8 megapixel ultra wide, you've got a 2 megapixel macro, and you've got a 2 megapixel black and white style lens. Let's begin by getting the easy part out of the way. Those last three cameras, and to be fair, all of the extra creative options at the end of the camera, you'll probably use it all a couple of times and then never think about it again. With the ultra wide offering some pretty washed out details and overly warm pictures, the macro lens is a fun gimmick that you'll use to shoot a bush at some point, and the tilt shift photography, you'll get up at your window, you'll take a picture and you'll think, oh, it makes it look like a toy town, and then you just won't open that again. But it all turns around when I get round to the star of the show. Realme have opted for Samsung's third generation 108 megapixel ISOCELL HM2 sensor with an f1.88 aperture and a 6-element lens that lets in a decent amount of light. Of course, numbers are just that, so let's take a look at the pictures and I can finally tell you what I think of what this cranks out. Off the top, it's fair to say that this gives you a crazy amount of detail, in a phone under £300. In classic Realme fashion, the photos colours are a little boosted, which is more of a personal preference thing really. A lot of people that I know like the boosted colours that come out of Samsung cameras, but I'm someone who prefers more true to life colours. It's really how you feel about it. And even in low light, thanks to the smart ISO and night mode, you can get some great shots out of this. It's pretty impressive what they've managed to squeeze into here. Now, what about video? Android phones have been legendarily average at phone video, and this is no different. Realme's focus on colour really comes into effect here, as everything looks quite warm, to the point that it can sometimes mess with the contrast of the scene, but it makes sharp video with a decent audio quality, which is what everybody needs from a budget phone. Also, there's a 16 megapixel hole punch camera up on front, which is fine. It's got good detail for selfies. The software works well to crop you out for portrait mode if need be. Not amazing, but it does the job. And finally, the battery. 4500 milliamp hours, supports fast charging, does not come with wireless charging, comes with a 50-watt fast charger in the box, and can charge to 50% in about 20 minutes. Realme's press notes say 17 minutes, I was getting it in about 20. But who's counting? It also comes with what they call an all-scenes battery optimization. Essentially, software tweaks to squeeze as much juice out of this as possible, such as quick freezing apps, a night charge guardian to make sure you don't damage your battery by overcharging it overnight, screen optimization, and what they call a super power saving mode. And the results are a pretty good battery life. I was able to get through a whole day of varied usage and come out the other end with about 20% of the battery left. So to clarify, varied use is some YouTube videos, gaming, checking my emails, a few phone calls, regularly browsing social media apps, and doing some web browsing, and some music on top of that. I'd probably put this in my worry-free battery category, something that you just turn it on in the morning and you don't really fret about the battery unless you're doing anything particularly strenuous on it. It's a big battery that will go for a while, and if you're in a situation where you do manage to run it all the way down, any kind of fast charging will bring this back up to 100% in 40 to 60 minutes in my testing. Good stuff. So let's put all of this together. Is this phone any good? And is it worth the money? And the answer, bringing everything in context, is yes. But that's not really the point anymore. The point is, to me, the brand stood head and shoulders above the competition in terms of offering a nice all-round budget phone experience. But now, they are not the only players getting good at this game. Xiaomi's Redmi Note 10 Pro, for example, has the same 108 megapixel sensor, has a marginally bigger aperture, no 5G, but it does sport a faster 732G processor and a bigger screen up front with a 120Hz refresh rate and HDR. Or maybe it's the Oppo Find X3 Lite. That may just have a 64 megapixel main sensor around the back, but at this level of detail, who's really counting? It also has a 90Hz display, and it also comes packed with a Snapdragon 765G processor, far more powerful. Or most recently, if you can spring the extra 100 quid for a big brand name, Samsung's Galaxy A52 offers a 120Hz screen, Snapdragon 750G, so you get 5G networking too. The quad camera features a 64 megapixel main shooter again, but the other cameras seem to have been given some more love here, with higher megapixel counts and a better aperture and lens setup than the Realme 8 Pro, giving you a far more diverse range of photography options. And all of these phones are in a similar price range to the Realme 8 Pro. I won't definitively say that any of them are better than this because I haven't got round to testing them, but on paper, it's an open and shut case. Which begs the real question, why bother? What I'm trying to say is the budget smartphone battleground is far more competitive than it has ever been. And that is a really good thing for you, as it challenges them to cram so much more stuff inside their phones and give you something that would even make the mid to top tier phones blush a little bit. But it also makes it really confusing to choose a phone. So let me help you make that decision by summing this thing up. At lower prices, of course there are going to be compromises. The 720G processor stumbles sometimes. The other cameras around this main camera are a bit naff. The plastic back feels a bit cheap. And of course the fact that nothing has changed inside of this phone. Not the battery, not the CPU, none of it. Plus, and let's not forget this, Realme have really shot themselves in the foot with a design like this. The Dare to Delete branding is going to divide potential buyers. In fact, it divided so many people in the comments on my previous video. Let me know what you think. Is this good to you? let's talk about it. But if you want a budget phone that goes in hard on a good camera system, then I'd probably wait and see what the Google Pixel 5a is capable of. And if you can't wait and you need something right now, then compare this alongside all the other options I spoke about earlier in the video and make your own choice. But ultimately, none of this comparison game takes away from the fact that this is a decent phone to use. It's a good phone with an amazing main camera, a good battery life, a handy, if bloated, UI skin, and most of you won't be disappointed using it. But the budget options this year are amazing, and I don't want you wasting your money, so give it some thought, yeah? Anyway, that is gonna do it for me. It's a decent phone, but it's gonna be easy for it to get lost in the noise of all its other competitors. But what do you think? Are you interested in getting this phone? Go ahead and let me know in the comments. And as always, likes if you enjoyed the video, subs if you loved it, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.